Yo, what's up, guys? Cyler Ray here. I'm going to break down something I've been wanting to do for a long time. I already did my top 10 games of all time, but someone gave me the idea to do my top 30. And instead of just kind of listing and talking about them, I thought I'd actually do one of the hardest things you can do, which is ranking your favorite games. So we have the traditional S, A, B, C, and D tiers. None of these games are Fs or arguably not even D tier. So it's not hate on the games because then these are my top 30 of all time. Small disclosure, there are two games I forgot to include in here that we could just kick it off with that too. But the two games that are not on here that should be on here is God of War 4. That was a groundbreaking game for me, and I had played it just recently after I had become a father, and it totally kind of, I don't know if the game would have impacted me as much had I not had the opportunity to be a dad and kind of get some of the nuances of things Kratos was going through, trying to be a good father and protector and everything like that. And so yeah, that's an S tier game for me. I do have another God of War game on here, but didn't want to miss that one out. And especially also S tier Bloodborne. I don't know how that one slipped my mind, probably because it's been so long, and with recent news that we'll probably just never get a remake of that game. It sucks, but at least we still have it in its PS4 glory, 30 frames per second. I'll take whatever I can get when it comes to that game. It's really one of the first Souls-like games I actually enjoyed. I'm not a particular huge fan of Souls-like. I think a lot of them are the same and repetitive, and Elden Ring switched that up. But again, like to this day, I think Elden Ring is a little overhyped for me, especially when you have something that is as close to perfection as Bloodborne was. So all you Bloodborne fans out there, that is one of my top games, but also probably my favorite Souls-like ever, and I don't see it ever getting dethroned unless they remake it. So now let's get to the nitty-gritty of talking about these actual games. First, we'll kick it off with everyone's game they like to dislike the most or like the most, and that's Fortnite. So Fortnite, I'm gonna put B tier. This is a weird one because it's live service. It's always updating, always doing new crossovers, but in certain seasons it's S, certain seasons it's maybe lower than D, F tier. Right now, I think it's been solid and consistent for the last year to year and a half. I've been pretty happy with it, but it's also the first time in probably a couple months, month and a half, that I haven't even really touched the game, except maybe to go on to look at new collabs, get some skins and get off, which at that point it's not a game. It's just become my digital skin collecting closet. So for that reason though, right now I think it's a solid B. It's dependable, reliable. I can still kill some time if I have some. If there's not other games on my mind that I want to play, Fortnite always takes my free time. And then my favorite Halo game of all time, Halo 2, this is S tier for me. I was always a big PlayStation fanboy. This was one of the first games where I actually, hated the fact they didn't have an Xbox. It made me really want to get one. Tons of late night hours with Mountain Dew and Doritos and all the memes and cliches. This game for me really hit all of those, for better or worse. Halo 2 is just legendary. I think it has the best campaign and story. And yeah, I just love Halo 2. It's a instant, easy S tier classic for me. Street Fighter 4. I'm actually gonna put this one in A tier just because I have another Street Fighter on here that is my S, but Street Fighter 4 is definitely in my, top 3 Street Fighters of all time, probably easily in that second slot. It's one of the first games I played competitively and got me really serious about fighting games, and actually realizing that with enough dedication and just hours upon hours of my life wasted on this game, how depends on how you look at it, but I remember going to like GameStop and Game Crazy, if you remember that store, tournaments for the first time, and actually doing some damage, like getting some work in, getting ranked pretty high. I think at one point I was like in the top 400 or 500 players globally, which was crazy. I don't think there's another game I've touched where I've even gotten broken maybe past the top 10,000. But Street Fighter was just, it had the classic appeal of what you go to Street Fighter for, but I think with the many editions of Street Fighter 4, which I bought all of, it's probably the game I own the most. Basically the same copies. I know they're upgraded versions and versions that included DLC and whatnot, but love the art style, love the freaking music. The marketing for it was like one of the best like hype machines ever in terms of gaming at that point. But yeah, just a solid game. Mario Kart 64 S tier. Best Mario Kart, still my favorite. I still go to it all the time, especially when my son gets a little bold. He gets a little cocky with the newer editions of Mario Kart. When he's starting to really level up, I always take us back to this game and he realizes, oh, this is like Mario Kart was a lot of difficulty. Like if you thought rubber banding is bad now, I think in this game that makes you love it and hate it all at the same time. The difficulty, just as you do better, the game just tries to screw you every which way possible. But you keep coming back for more because it was just awesome. Didn't need a bunch of characters, didn't need a crazy amount of courses, but especially for the time, I feel like it had all the cups were great, all the courses were great. Rainbow Road, just classic. Age of Empires 2, I'm going to put in my A tier. This is another time suck game that I played for hours and hours and hours, and it's more than any other, more than like StarCraft or Warcraft at the time. For some reason about this game, I liked the realism, the historical pieces of it. It's one of the few games my dad got really into too, and so it was fun to see kind of like learning from him and his tactical mind and trying to get better at the game. And it's one of the games I think that kind of forced me to really not just get good at a game, but I wanted to just become excellent at everything it offered me. I wanted to optimize everything. And so I think it really set me up to go on to beat more difficult future games in completely different genres, even leading into like Street Fighter, just kind of taking gaming from a, silly hobby, play games when you have the time to like, no, I want to like invest a good deal of my life in this and try to get good at it. But yeah, solid. It's probably my top 5 most hours put into a game of all time easily. Guild Wars, I'm just going to put C tier. We'll do the first C tier there. Guild Wars is great. Again, these tiers aren't necessarily to knock the game. I'm just forcing myself to see what my absolute favorites of my favorites are. But Guild Wars was awesome. It was one of the first MMOs I was like actually allowed to play. In my household, it was very restrictive when it came to online games where I could interact with other people besides toxic Call of Duty lobbies, which I always find funny that back in the day, I feel like more parents were okay with that, maybe because they didn't know what was going on or being said in those lobbies as opposed to like playing World of Warcraft or Guild Wars. But this was a super fun game, and it was the first MMO I played not with friends. I was pretty much solo the whole time, had a blast, met people I would have never met otherwise, and the guild system and having an actual place where you guys could all hang out was really cool. And I'm just now getting into Guild Wars 2. I've had enough World of Warcraft fatigue that it's kind of pushed me to see what's cooking over there, but loved the original Guild Wars. It's awesome. Modern Warfare 2, another S tier shooter. This, I debated putting Modern Warfare or 1 or 2. I think it's a little redundant to do both, but I think Modern Warfare 2 just took what was excellent about 1 and just made everything that much better. Better campaign, better story, better villains, has one of the most groundbreaking, for better or worse, levels you get to play. And I think it just kind of really opened my eyes to what like not just shooters could be, but online shooters. And like, again, had a ton of friends. A lot of these games I had lots of friends to play with. So there might be some social bias there, but especially in modern gaming where I feel like it gets harder and harder to just find some time to get a group of people together. This is just another heyday time that I just sunk tons of hours on my PlayStation 3 on, and it was just awesome. WCW NWO Revenge, that's another S tier for me. It's probably easily one of my favorite Nintendo 64 games of all time. I think I rented it like 6 times before my dad actually bought it for me, but I was like 8. I was super into wrestling, so it was that much cooler to not just have a wrestling game, but just having all these iconic characters clash with these factions and everything. And I was a big Goldberg fan, even though as an adult I realized like, man, he got paid a lot of money to wrestle for like 30 seconds at a time and just sweeped, which again, I think was the appeal of him as a character. But I definitely in retrospect can see that why maybe people didn't love Goldberg. But again, tons of fun hours with friends. Like you'd go from wrestling in the game to wrestling in real life and back to the game. And it was super fun. And we'd try to recreate real matches that had happened or do some of my first what if wrestling scenarios. That was fun. And it had me thinking at the age of 8, I could run a conglomerate wrestling company. I could be my own Vince McMahon, even though I don't think a lot of people want to be him right now. Super Mario World S tier. Again, this is probably one of my all-time favorite SNES games. It was one of the first video games that I really, really got into. I feel like growing up when I was super young, people had consoles and I was allowed to play them for little bits of time here and there. But Super Mario World was one of the first ones that I actually had an SNES and I could like really grind and get through. And it was one of the first games I remember being, at least at the time for my age, like really difficult. And it took me probably years to actually beat it, but it definitely taught me things like patience and perseverance and trying again and again. That bleeds into why I game today. So this is like one of my foundational games that made me evolve into what I am today, where I just love a lot of different games. I put as much time into them as possible, definitely complete them. Gave me that taste of, that bitter taste of not completing a game and wishing you had. So it kind of set me up for future gaming success. And is a lot of part of the DNA of this channel too. Pokemon Yellow, I'm going to put A tier. It's definitely my favorite probably Pokemon game of all time. Is actually my sister originally got it. She had the awesome transparent purple Game Boy, and it was just really sick to spend, not just playing the game. The game was fun and awesome, but it was like one of the first times at a young age that me and my sister really connected on something, and I think we like bought it and basically in like a couple days just freaking beat it. We were at my grandparents' house and had a lot of time to kill, and that's what we did. We had the Game Boy Light that, because you couldn't see anything on that screen if it was even as dark as this room. And so a lot of AA batteries were spent getting through this banger of a Pokemon game. And I just loved Pikachu. Squirtle's my favorite starter, but it was cool to have the change of pace of like, oh no, you're just going to use Pikachu. If you're indecisive, it's a great game. God of War 3. This, again, since God of War 4, going back to it, that is S tier for sure. I'll put it A tier. It's practically S tier, but since I have a God of War invisibly in that slot, I'll put it in the A tier. God of War 3 was awesome. I've probably played that more than any other God of War game, but just that classic action combat, and the story was cool, wrapping up this epic arc that you just wanted to see Kratos throw hands with his dad and completely obliterate him, which he pretty much does. And again, it's pivotal in setting up what we know God of War as of now today. So just an awesome bridge to even more awesome, cool God of War games. But yeah, when it comes to that classic God of War feel, this is the one I go back to time and time again. God of War 2 is up there too. Like, it's just outside my 30. But yeah, I probably played God of War 2 on PS2 for so many hours. It's ridiculous. GoldenEye 007, maybe there's a hot take. I'm going to put it B. I actually would have probably had an S tier game like most people do, but as much as I did play it, it's funny how much I didn't recall of the game, even thinking about making this video. Like I was like looking at videos and old gameplay and playing it on my Switch and whatnot, and just seeing how it lives up to today. And again, it was instrumental in, I think, helping shooters become what they are today, and a lot of just good memories that I still remembered, like parachuting off the freaking dam, or what was it, like that semi-snowy level. I might be butchering it because, again, it's been a while since I played, but I just remember getting so freaking frustrated and trolled by friends who would play as a dude with the bowler hat, the Asian guy. I can't remember his name, but yeah, I'm probably pissing a lot of people off talking about this, so I should stop talking about it. But man, when you're a little guy with a smaller hitbox than everyone else, it's definitely a cheat code. Dragon Ball Z Budokai 3, S tier for me. It's another game that kept my love of fighting games going. I loved the first two entries in the series, and Budokai 3 was one of the first collector's edition games I like pre-ordered from GameStop. I remember forcing my mom to take me the day it came out and getting my awesome box with, like, I think it had like a plastic Dragon Ball in it. And it finally also, I feel like one thing that the earlier games, it sucked, was waiting for all the new characters and arcs to be introduced in the game, because I think they were still kind of wrapping things up on Toonami and whatnot. So it was cool to have like the full Dragon Ball Z package and experience, playing as like Boo and Ultimate Gohan. Piccolo's like my favorite anime character of all time, so I was playing him a lot, even though but before Fighters, Piccolo was not a top contender, usually a great character in fighting games, but I think Fighters changed that a little bit, even though he's, to me, hard as hell to play as, but once you figure him out, he can be pretty broken. World of Warcraft, S tier. It's still, for better or worse, my favorite MMO of all time. Another game that's in my top 5 for most time. It's one of the few games I've played since childhood till now. Like, I'm still stoked in figuring out and discovering everything that's in Midnight and all the latest expansions, and there's been a lot of misses when it comes to this series and franchise. But World of Warcraft as a whole, it's a game that I'll probably be playing when I'm in a community home with my buddies, retiring in the same place, if it works out in that fantasy fictional way. But yeah, World of Warcraft it's still got its teeth in me. I'm always excited to get new mounts and not buy mounts on the in-game shop. But besides all the negative things we could talk about for years on World of Warcraft, it's still like one of the craziest awesome experiences I had as a kid. I had to kind of like sneak to play this game because, again, playing these types of games online was not super cool or allowed at my household. So it's probably that's what started my early adolescence rebellion, that a lot of that phase everyone goes through. But it's a game that has also connected some of my nearest and dearest friends that I knew from school and still keep in touch with now. And it's a lot of it because of this game, which is crazy. So I owe it a lot, just not as a game, but just as the friendships and relationships I've built over time. It was very instrumental in creating those and keeping them together. Dota 2, I'm going to put an A just because I never was as good at this game as I wanted to be or thought I was. This is another game that I got heavy into the competitive scene while I was trying to balance the stupid summer sales job that was sucking up all my time. But those late nights on the East Coast, I remember booting up Dota 2. We had like a really close-knit team, most of which were friends. We had to kind of pick up some stragglers when we needed to fill some lanes. But Dota 2 to this day is also just a better experience for me than League ever was. I think it's a lot harder. It's more complex, I think. There's a lot more you have to remember and memorize. And I just love the fact, too, that you could just boot up the game and use anyone you want. You didn't have to invest, $500 to unlock all the characters or try out who you think might be fun. So I think Dota 2 is, like, to me, the most refined MOBA experience. Still to this day, I haven't really touched anything that comes close or is addicting, but love Dota 2. This is like a newer top one, but Claire Expedition 30, Claire Obscure, brand new game, brand new hype. I loved it, fell in love with it from the first 20 minutes of playing the game. It had been a long time since I'd felt so emotional or so invested in a game right off the bat, all the way to the end. There's so much you can talk about, from the incredible music, the art style, just everything. This game works perfectly to suck you into its universe and almost makes you glad that it's not reality, but it also gives you that weird fanboy energy of just like, oh, I would totally be in this world and I'd survive and be a badass and stuff. And I think it deserves all the awards and praise. I think it's one of the first game of the years that is not overhyped. I think even with all the hype this game has, if you haven't played it, it'll never live up to what other people say unless you experience it for yourself. And it's one of the few games like everyone I talk to has good things to say about it, or at the worst, like, oh, this is on my backlog, like I'm going to get to it, but it's like, play it now. It's awesome. F-Zero, I'll put this one in A tier. This was another SNES classic that I just loved. I think it was one of, if not the first F-Zero game. I'm not 100% sure on that, but introduces to iconic characters like Captain Falcon and stuff. I think he's in the game, right? I think, like, again, a lot of these games I need to revisit because it's been so long, but probably the first racing game that, sucked up a lot of my time. And I was very competitive with my uncles and trying to show that I'm even though I'm a young, stupid kid, I'm better at you at something, or you don't even know. But I never got great at this game either. But super fun experience, nostalgia overload like crazy every time I hear the music or see it. It's just brings a smile to my heart. RE4, S tier, like it is probably for most. My favorite Resident Evil game of all time, and it's not even close. Even though I've had a blast with RE9 recently, RE4 just has everything I want out of this franchise, and Leon's like my favorite character, like he probably is for most. And I think it had some really cool, third-person shooting and combat concepts that I feel like when you're looking at it, especially in retrospect, you're like, this game looks like so stiff and trash, but it just works so seamlessly and works so well with the story and the level design that it's like a game. If you had seen it before you had played it, you're like, this looks a little janky, but after playing it, it's like it couldn't have been done any other way. And the remake was awesome too. Like, I think it built upon it. I don't think it changed anything or did anything revolutionary to where it took too much out of what appealed to so many people in the original. But, it's a GameCube classic, man. It's one of the probably only Resident Evil games I played on a Nintendo console, but it was awesome. The GameCube controller is still my favorite way to play this game. It was great. Rayman 2, I'm going to put it in D, but again, it's not because it sucks. This is actually a D grade for myself, not so much the game. But this game was just a game that to this day I've never beat. I don't know why I couldn't remember being so frustrated with the game than this one. It was like, I feel like especially for the target demographic of kids and stuff, it was like, I thought it was absurdly hard. I need to go back and beat it. Maybe we'll do a stream where I finally conquer one of my childhood frustrations in the game. I got pretty far in it, but the annoying thing is too, it took me a while before I could afford like a memory pack so I could even save my game. So I started this game clean like 100 times. And I'm sure that built up the frustration of the game too, where it's just like you're going back to the same level and it's like, oh, I'll try again tomorrow. Oh, wait, I got to go through all that again just to get to the part where I know I can't get past it. So that's one I still need to conquer, but definitely my favorite Rayman game ever. I had some fun with like Game Boy Advance Rayman games that were pretty sweet, but that is by far my favorite Rayman. And lots of nostalgia, mostly negative, but it's still good. It still makes the list. And then C tier Resistance Fall of Man. This was like my first PS3 game. It was the first taste of like what the next gen power at the time could do. And I think it did a really good job showcasing it. And I didn't realize till later it was made by the same guys that make, was it Jak and Daxter Ratchet and Clank? And you can kind of see that in the awesome, unique weapon design. And that was probably one of my favorite things about this first person shooter compared to others. I feel like it had the coolest, some of the most unique weapon design ever. And it's always fun in the game where like you want to progress through the story, but you also want to see what crazy thing is given to you and put in your hands to mow down enemies and whatnot. And I feel like a lot of people were Gears of War hungry at this point, and I feel like this was like my Gears of War because I didn't have a 360, not yet, but I thought it did a great job of being not just a console seller, but it's one of those games where I wish would make a comeback. I know there were sequels and I played them, and I think it's a game that it should be on everyone's list to make a good comeback because I think what they could do with it now in modern times would be absolutely bonkers and insane. Marvel vs. Capcom 2, goated. Top 5 fighting game of all time for me, easily. My favorite, Marvel vs. Capcom, easily. The most nostalgic and recognizable music maybe of any fighting game ever made. It's impacted my life in so many different ways. It's through this game like I discovered people like Maximilian Dude and other awesome creators, and I just had a blast with this game. Another game with like a very high skill ceiling. It's a game that it's pretty easy to just jump in and pick up, but it was so fast paced and brain melting that you really had to like put in time to be decent at this game. And I never played this game competitively or in like a very serious competitive scene like I did with like Street Fighter games and whatnot. I still, the funniest thing is fighting games are my favorite genre, but I'm also probably the worst at them, or like I have to put in 8 times the effort and time as the next guy to be even just average. And even to this day, MVC2, like I can play any character. I still have combos memorized, but I'm still just okay at it. Like I've played against nieces and nephews that are 10 playing for the first time, and within a couple days they can wipe the floor with me. So, you know, I would never take fighting game advice seriously from me because I don't think I'm good enough to speak on it, unless it's like Street Fighter 4 or some very specific titles. Super Smash Brothers Melee, I'm going to throw in A tier. Could go A or S, but Melee is the Smash Brothers game that just set the bar for me. And, you know, its sequel was so bad in comparison, so much slower and clunkier, but Melee was awesome. Another just, you know, if you had a GameCube, you had this game. If you didn't, something was wrong with you, or maybe your family didn't love violence in any form in their home. But I can't imagine any good reason why you wouldn't have this on your GameCube. It's still played competitively to this day. This is another game where I tried the competitive scene out, or like semi-pro circuits, like more local, chill places. Never got very far. But it was one of those games too where I think it was just one of the most simple games to just pick up and play, but one of the more difficult ones to master. But it didn't seem like that at first. And this is a game too that some of my close friends, it's one of their favorite games. So like I learned, like almost everyone I played this game with was way better than me. So it was a great time to just not only play with friends, but learn with friends. And like one of my friends was like a semi mentor in it to try to help me get better. So we could do some like pro team circuit stuff, but never came to fruition because my skills just couldn't keep up with how much better everyone was getting at me at a much faster pace. And then we have Killer Instinct. I'm gonna put this in C tier for me just because it's, again, I love fighting games so much. Like it's crazy that there's not more in this list, but Killer Instinct I just loved as a kid because I thought it was like, for a fighting game when I was a kid, I thought it was a little spooky, scary. Like I thought the characters were cool, but some were scary. Like it was like kind of intense to play at a young age, and that might sound super lame, but I love the character models, the art design. Like There's never been anything like it. Even like Killer Instinct follow-ups and stuff, they obviously have to give that like modern polish to new games and remakes and reboots and whatnot. But it's one of those games that I just love because I think it was such a unique experience for me at the time, and I've yet to kind of feel that same energy again from any fighting game, especially let alone a modern fighting game. But yeah, just really awesome characters. It's a game I didn't know too much about, but buying game guides and everything is one of those games where I just wanted to learn all the secrets. So back then, especially if you had a slow internet connection or someone's on the phone, you get kicked off. You gotta spend that saved up lunch money on some guides to get better. And so that game, I guess, wasn't pivotal in helping me like understand that, oh, if you want to get good at some of these games, you have to actually like put in the time and study, like treat it like school. Pokemon Stadium, A tier. I'm so glad they brought this back on the Switch through like the virtual consoles and stuff. Like, it's a game I still play to this day, and I'm super stoked for Pokemon Champions because I think it's kind of the spiritual successor to this game. And as someone who's very much loves Pokemon, but when it comes to the mainline games has always been very, what's the word? Not passive, but kind of a pleb, a noob. Like, kind of never took it too seriously. Very casual. That's the word I'm looking for. As someone who just wanted to jump in, rent some Pokemon, and see some cool battles happen in 3D for the first time was just freaking awesome. And I just remember taking my broken Squirtle, who had just like maxed out speed, and just mowing down complete teams with just my little dwarpy Squirtle, and it was great. And then Halo 3, yeah, I had to put this one up there. I'll put this one in A. It's not quite Halo 2 for me. It's damn near close. But this game, I honestly can't remember how good the campaign was or the story was, but this was just from a multiplayer fun factor, like with the Forge and people making these crazy, unique custom games. Like, I think just some concepts in what everyday people made, like, eventually became their own separate, full-on studio games and whatnot. Nothing really pops into my mind, but there's just a lot you could do and things you could discover and create. And if there's something you wanted to experience in Halo, or do like kind of a 2D platformer, Halo, it kind of gave you the tools to do that. So it was not just a fun time sink in the game itself, but from a social perspective, I think is this when they introduced like Mountain Dew Game Fuel, which the OG one's like my favorite, to this day, my favorite game fuel of all time. I'm so mad they never made that like permanent, or you only see it here and there, not as much as it should. But yeah, one of the best Halos. Was drinking the best Mountain Dew while I played it, so I gotta rank it this high. But yeah, like, just as much fun as Halo 2 when it comes to online multiplayer and playing with buddies and friends. Guitar Hero 3, I'll put a B. I'm also really excited for like where this game is going, and Red Octane is kind of re-emerging to make a new game. I just did a video on it. It's got like main stage or world stage, or I'm butchering it. But anyways, Guitar Hero 3, even more so than 2, I never remember investing so much time into any type of music game whatsoever. It was before drums. I was always a big drum guy, but this was kind of like pre-Rock Band, or maybe around the same time. But, it's one of the games that, Through the Fire and Flames was placed before you, and you either shred through that thing or you let it shred you and go back and forth. But I think I was just talking to a buddy of mine about this. Like, I think I literally finally completed that song, like barely made it. Like, I didn't get anywhere close to perfect, but just enough to where I didn't get booed off stage. And then after I did that, I kind of moved on to other things. But Hero 3 is something I hope that is like the biggest influence in terms of new games that they come out with, because with what Fortnite did with Festival and stuff, it doesn't hit the same near as much, even though you have a lot bigger catalog to play with. But I'm excited for the future of what this is. And I don't know if it would have made the list if I hadn't just made that video on what they're kind of doing with the series going forward, but it's amazing game. And my only sports title, if you don't count like Mario racing games, NFL 2K. Put this A tier. Remember getting this it was one of the OG games I got on my Sega Dreamcast. It's still to this day the most fun I've ever had with a football game. I thought that they were going to keep being awesome, but I feel like, pun intended, I think Madden fumbled the ball tons of times. They continue to do it. I think the last time I got really heavy into a Madden was back in like 2016. The football game series in general are kind of dead for me, but this game is one that I wish I could go back to it. I think one day I'm going to probably have to spend some unnecessary dollars on a Dreamcast in this game. I wouldn't be surprised if this game's even worth more in the console at this point, because I think it is a legendary football game and kind of set the standard of games going forward. And like around the time too, I feel like Madden was at or close to or moving towards its peak too. But I really wish they would have brought it back and Sega would have like kept licensing rights to it, because I think they did have the better game, at least at the time. But I think they may have been able to do some cooler creative things in the future with it, but we'll probably never get to see it. Street Fighter 2 S tier. This is in my like top 2 games of all time easily. Another SNES time sink. It was what I can recall, really my first fighting game, my first taste of what a fighting game could be. I remember spending hours with my uncle, and he was having to tell me 100 times over how to do a simple Hadouken. And as a kid at like 4 or 5, I was just like, buttons, directions, what? But initially it didn't just, it's such a influential game for me because it didn't just get me started in what is now my favorite type of game, but it is what kept me gaming in general. I was just like, man, people fighting on a screen 1v1 like this, if this is this cool, what else can they come up with or cook with? And so that always kept my gaming interest for years to come, and still does to this day. And I revisit it all the time. I've bought all the versions, all the HD remasters, collections. I don't know if there's another game that I own technically so many copies of or versions of than this game, and there's a lot out there. And one day I'll get my 1-Up arcade, or get like, I've always wanted to get like a legit 90s still functioning arcade cabinet, but they're either impossible to find or crazy expensive. So I'm going to have to do a lot more great YouTube work to get to the status of having that OG arcade experience in my living room. But just, yeah, I could write a whole book on this game. It's awesome. I'm gonna skip this one just because it is my favorite, but Star Wars Rogue Leader, I'll put on D2 just because I think it was obviously impactful, made the list, but it's another game that I need to revisit because I don't recall a ton about it. I just remember having tons of fun playing it. It's probably my favorite Star Wars game of all time, even if you love KOTOR and stuff. Like, I remember the voice acting and the dude that does the tutorials and stuff. It was just really cool. You jump right into, I think, wasn't the first mission like the Death Star mission or something, or maybe that was the demo, but just another GameCube seller for me. Like, it was like this and Melee were my only 2 GameCube games for like a year. So it was like all I had to do, but I was happy to put so much time into this game. Super fun. And I also liked that it was challenging, but it was pretty easy to get through, even at however old I was, like 8, 9, or 10, but just a super fun experience. I've fallen out of Star Wars love recently. This is probably also the height of my love for Star Wars. Like, after seeing like the Phantom Menace and everything and getting my first Star Wars theatrical experience, it was a great comfort game to just come back to. And I probably played through it and beat it multiple times, because not only because it was one of the few games I had at the time, but it was just fun. I was never bored with it. And then my final game, favorite game of all time. Here, can I put you up here? Kingdom Hearts 2. Kingdom Hearts 1 is great. Even at the pre-teenage I was at, I think when I played Kingdom Hearts, it was very difficult. It took me a long time. Probably took me a few years to get through the first game just because I got so frustrated. But I think Kingdom Hearts 2 was the perfect balance of difficulty, of story, even though it still to this day doesn't make a whole lot of sense. But also you throw in awesome Final Fantasy characters and Sephiroth, who's like arguably one of the best villains of all time, and then give you the option to actually like fight him, and it's one of the hardest fights you'll ever play in your life. But I thought even compared to Kingdom Hearts 3, the combat is still the best. Like, I almost feel like Kingdom Hearts 3 took a step backwards in terms of story, cinematics, and even just the gameplay itself and the combat. I thought Kingdom Hearts 2 is still to this day like the most fun I've had with a Kingdom Hearts game, but the most fun I've had with a game in general. And I remember, I think my dad bought it for me, and he's like, it's kind of kiddie because there's like Disney characters and stuff, the original one at least. And, I had so much fun with the original that kind of bought the second one on a whim. At the time, I wasn't like, I need to play this, but especially in my time of life at that point, I was in a really dark phase. I was kind of starting to discover the realities of life and dealing with depression and stuff for the first time at only like 11 or 12 years old. And this game literally, and I've made several videos about it, you can go watch them, but this game literally in a lot of ways saved my life, even at as sad as that is to say when you're that young. But this game I can definitely see why it's not on the top of anyone's games, but this game is number one for me just because maybe even beyond the game itself, it just impacted my life so positively and was a literal lifeline for me that nothing I think will ever top it, you know, and that's nothing against modern games or anything, but there's just certain experiences you go through life and the things you do in those experiences to get through them that will just never, you hope at least there'll never be a time like that again where you do need something as impactful as Kingdom Hearts 2. But and Mickey in a, you know, Organization 13 hoodie is just badass. Like, I used to have so many figures. I've gone through stages as a collector of buying a bunch of stuff, selling a bunch of stuff. Like, I almost feel like I'm addicted to buying and selling. And so like I used to have a ton of Kingdom Hearts stuff. I unfortunately don't have as much now, but probably not too long in the future, I'm sure I'll have a kick-ass collection. But yep, that's pretty much the video. Thanks for hanging out, guys. Sorry if this was really hard to listen to. I'm usually scripted, and this was all off the cuff, off memory, and you can tell my memory is not good because I had trouble just referencing experiences of some of these games. But I hope you enjoyed it, and I'll link this tier list in the bottom below. It probably doesn't have yours, but even these aren't your top games. How would you rank them? Or if there's certain games that you don't like at all, or you're just like, oh my gosh, that's an S tier game for me, you're a loser, let me know down in the comments. It's always a fun time. As always, I'm Cyler Ray, and I'll see you guys in the next one. Peace.